Bonsoir. Cette vidéo contient des révélations importantes sur l'intrigue. Veuillez en tenir compte avant de la regarder. That's just a bit. I don't actually know French. I just practiced that for like 2 minutes, 5 minutes. That was being graceful. Anyway, I'm just saying that there's spoilers in this. You probably didn't understand me because I'm not going to add subtitles. You could probably turn them on. I don't know if it'll all translate it, but I was just saying there'll be spoilers. Anyway, okay, enjoy the video. I beat Clair Obscur, and it was kind of crazy just how much the game built itself up to be one of the favorites, my favorites of the year, more specifically over this long stretch of time while playing the game. Yeah, the game really does sort of feel like this thing, like the developers, artists, actors, and musicians were like all in this sort of agreement about what they set out to do. You can definitely tell that it's like not this like really super pristine, polished experience when it comes to like just some of the technical things, and I don't really have any specifics, but like, you know, there would be things where like characters would like fall through platforms. Maelle, did you see that? Verso just jumped. He didn't even say goodbye or anything. Oh, there he is. It's just gaming stuff. It's not really that big a deal, but like, you know, it is there. It kind of feels like it's a little bit more human, you know, like mistakes kind of make things feel like it's a more human product whenever they're allowed to kind of stay there. But anyway, I don't really want to settle on the game being like that, so I'll just kind of get into the things I like about it. I don't really even know where to start, but the combat is probably the most obvious spot because it's just really good. Like, I just thought the combat was pretty fun, even though I feel like I'm a bit biased because I really like parrying. That does make me like it more than other turn-based games because I do think I still prefer turn-based that doesn't have as much activity as Clair Obscur does, because it does require you to be pretty active, I think, whenever you're playing it. But honestly, that's not even the best part. I think a lot of people will think that's the best part, but to me, the best part is just like all the systems in place around it, like the pictos that are basically like your armor, and then you have skills that require like AP that gets built up from parrying, so it's kind of like based around the parrying, and then you have grading attacks, which are basically like limit breaks from like Final Fantasy VII that don't waste a turn. So you can kind of like be strategic and be like, oh, let me use this grading attack before I use my move that might be in support of that gradient attack. Or like Lune, one of the characters in the game, had like a ability where she could make like a big tree and it would heal people and like cure their status effects. So if you didn't want to waste a turn healing or like, you know, getting rid of whatever they had, you could just use the tree instead. I just feel like it comes together very well. One thing that I personally liked was that all the characters sort of had this win condition or set up to their play styles. I feel like when I become busted in an RPG, right, I just beat Metaphor before I beat Clair Obscur, and I feel like when you become busted, you can just immediately pull out the really broken shit. A lot of the characters have like this really, what is it? Like a win condition. Lune, you can make her skills stronger by using other skills to generate these little points that show, like blips that show up on her weapon called stains. Let's say like you use a lightning skill and it generates like lightning stains. But then another move says if you have lightning stains and you use this move, it can use those up to make this move stronger. A lot of characters have that. Like there's one character that basically like builds up cards. Her name is Seal. She builds up cards on the enemy, and depending on how many cards she has in the enemy, you can do things like more damage or heal your characters more based on whatever moves that you're using. So yeah, I wouldn't even say that the parrying was the best part, even though I feel like a lot of people would say that that was why they really liked the combat in Clair Obscur and why like it kind of popped off as like a turn-based RPG game. But to me, it was just all the stuff around it. I think they made a good system around the combat that worked well. Like they weren't just thinking, oh, if we add parry, everybody will love this. I think they were definitely really thorough with not just throwing it in there, like implementing it pretty cleanly. I do feel like they did a good job of like modernizing this. Not modernizing, but like catering it to a modern audience, I should say. Like, because I won't say that turn-based games are dated, but I will say that at times it's been hard to convince people that they can be fun because like you're not super active. This system kind of meets that idea in the middle and does this sort of action-based, turn-based combat system. And I wonder how many people would have played it had those mechanics not been there. I'm not saying that like it's only popular for that, but like I do wonder like how much of an influence has it had, and like is it worth it to like think about it a little bit more and kind of go deep into it and maybe start putting it in more turn-based games to get people to play them more. Some of them can kind of carry their own weight. I think like Final Fantasy and Octopath and Dragon Quest can kind of carry their own weight, but you know, like for a new IP, it might be worth thinking about to like bring it back a little bit more, or like even bring it back to those franchises that I mentioned, because maybe we could go back to having a turn-based Final Fantasy game and it could be like really popular because we just put those mechanics in there, so who knows. I think it's worth thinking about it. But anyway, yeah, so the combat's really good, and I talked a lot about the characters in the combat, so I kind of want to talk about the characters next. But I want to start off with Gustav. I don't have the accent, so I don't really know how you pronounce it. I call him Gustav, but sometimes Maelle's like Gustav, so I don't know. But I wasn't too crazy about him in the combat. I just thought that his skills were not that interesting, which was probably on purpose, because he's like a really good character for getting you into the game. Like I said, you got to build up with these characters. So for him, he had it was so early on. What was it? He had this like overcharge meter, and if you use certain moves or like parried, it would build up. And then he had a move called overcharge, I think, that basically used up the whole meter to do like big amounts of damage. So that was pretty much his thing. It wasn't too complicated, and I like characters that are a little bit more like complex. So he wasn't my favorite to use, but I think he was a perfect character for like starting out the game, because he just kind of like exudes the energy of someone who understands he has people he needs to protect and take care of, almost like a father. And having his kind of sort of ex-girlfriend gomage at the very beginning to give him and us like a motivation to pursue the narrative further was a great idea. I also like how easily he sort of lost hope for the expedition once he lands on the island. Oh, spoilers, I guess, for the opening of the game, but he kind of like loses hope very early in the beginning because they get jumped by one of the, spoilers again, antagonists of the game. He goes to a really dark place, and afterwards he finds the Lune, the second character who shows up in our party, and she is like a good foil to his unstable, more like emotional character, because he's already been through quite a bit, and he has like this really emotional motivation that we don't really understand about Lune yet. She could or could not have one at this point in the game, but like she is a bit more like stoic and principled. So it was kind of a good way to ground him and help him simmer down, because she's very curious and is more intent on like getting these answers to the paintress and the monolith. So she's like really by the books, I would say, because I won't get too deep into it, but there was a moment where like they're searching for someone, because someone leaves them a message, and she's like, oh, we shouldn't look for them because we were told to wait at this tree, and I am going to follow this because it'll help our chances of survival, basically. And Gustav is basically, because he's more emotional, he's like, no, someone could be out there, someone's alive, so we got to go get him. And so it's like a nice like dichotomy for like two characters in the beginning, because you kind of want to side with Gustav at this point, because it's giving him this drive to like proceed a little more, and at the same time it gives you a little bit of worry because of Lune, and she's like, no, we shouldn't do it, this is really bad, like they wouldn't write this, no one would write a message, we were told to stay at the tree. I just thought that was a really cool character moment. And okay, I do have to talk about this character that happens way later on, so this is another like kind of like major spoiler, but Verso I want to talk about a lot, because like I kind of was on this emotional roller coaster with Verso. I was not crazy about him, because there's a moment where they kill off Gustav, and I'm like, oh shit, Gustav's dead. The antagonist, I'm just gonna call him Renoir. It's Renoir. Renoir is the antagonist at this point, and he kills Gustav, and he's going to take Maelle, I believe, because Verso feels the need to like save her, and so he saves her after Renoir kills Gustav. We managed to flee with our party, and this is in Act 2. I think this starts Act 2 actually. And after this happens, Verso joins the party, and I was like, I don't know this guy. Who the heck is this guy? Like, he just shows up out of nowhere, and I'm just supposed to accept him? Nah, I'm not gonna put him in the party. So I refused to put him in the party in the beginning. There were a couple other moments that were a little bit goofier as to why I left him at the party, but I didn't put him in the whole party. I didn't put him in the party for Act 2, like maybe for like an hour before I bumped him off again. I said, nah, I can't do this. I'd recommend learning a bit of Verso. It's too late. It's too late now. I gave him a shot. You want to know what did it for me, actually? It's because, one, he thought he could be Gustav's replacement. Most people I think would be really excited that they got a new party member, but I'm going to be totally honest with you, I could not give a shit. He can't just come in here and just hope that I'm just going to like him and want to know everything about him. No. Second off, he didn't tell me about the gradient attacks until Minoko was like, you didn't teach him about the gradient attacks? I can cast my own gradient attacks? You bastard, I'm taking him off the team. Verso didn't teach me about this. You watched me die. I was getting smacked up by that rock man. Then the third reason, when we were at the dancing lady, we showed up and the party is like, oh, look at the dancing lady, look at the dancing lady. And we all get caught by the mesmerizing spell. And then later on during the map, he's like,
don't look at her for too long or you'll go insane. I've seen people jumping off a cliff just from looking at her.
Why did you not say that when we got here? I'm like, bitch, you didn't tell me that when I first showed up. You let the whole team get mesmerized first. Why didn't you tell me that before we walked into the map? And I was like, nah, Verso, you gotta stay off the team. Later, though, in Act 3, and I'm not gonna really get into what happens, everything kind of like starts to come together after you finish Act 2. And like I start feeling emotionally sympathetic to Verso a lot more. And I actually come around to him and he finished the game on my team in Act 3. He finished the game, which I was very surprised about. Like he ended up being one of my most valuable characters, and I won't say he's the most fun to play. I really don't think that he was the most interesting character to play, so I didn't put him on my team because like honestly he just did fat damage. But at the same time, I did like him enough to end up putting him on my team because I could be quite stubborn when it comes to things like that. So I did wind up putting him on my team, and he ended up being like a pretty good asset. But I just liked this sort of like the choice to put him in to replace Gustav had to be intentional in the sense of like trying to evoke some sort of emotion out of the players, because I feel like why would you throw him in there with like no context as to who he is, you know? If you didn't want us to hate him. I just feel like they wanted us to hate him. Not hate him, but like kind of be a little like wary, you know? Because he knows the guy that killed Gustav. He's like talking to him as if he's known him, you know? So it's just like you kind of like hit him with the side eye. You just, you know, I don't know. So I really liked that because I feel like that's bold, you know, like let's just play. They did a lot of things where you have to like, they tricked you, you know? Okay, I'm gonna ramble a little bit, but like Gustav has like these skills on his skill tree that are locked, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get them eventually. When do they become unlocked? And he dies, and then you don't get them. So it's just like, oh shit, you tricked me. Like, why would you do that? And then, you know, Verso getting on the team, and you're just like, oh shit, like now I have to play as this guy I don't know who replaces Gustav, and like he's, you know, like trying to be friends with everybody, and I don't like him, they don't like him, so why would I like him? You know? Okay, anyway, I don't know, I just thought that was really cool. I think since I'm on this topic though, I will talk about one thing I kind of wished was stronger, was just some of the, like the characters don't really have, okay, some of them don't really have like their own little arcs that kind of help them grow outside of these discussions you can have with them at the camp. Some of them fall a little bit to the wayside, you know? Like we don't get to see some of their own personal character growth journeys all that much from what I remember anyway. Like I just kind of remember not really caring too much about Lune, Ciel, and Minoko, who's another party member that you get on your team. Yeah, I just don't think that he really, I don't really think that the game really does a great job at trying to make us care for like everybody equally. Because at the end, I only really cared about Maelle and Verso's whole deal, because it is kind of about them. You know, the other characters had lives too, and you do kind of get glimpses of them, but I don't know, maybe they could have had like character flaws that they could have dived into, that some of this journey could have like helped them kind of get over. Like for example, like you know, I'll cut this some slack because I know this is like a smaller game than some of the larger RPGs out there, so this kind of feels like an unfair comparison, but FF7 I feel like does a really good job at having these characters go through their own arcs based on these like subplots that happen across your journey to stop the bad guy. Again, that's like an unfair comparison, but I'm just using it as an example to say that I would have liked it in that aspect. I only got the relationships to level 4, but even then, I don't know if that would have like made up for the lack of like character development between those specific characters, Lune, Ciel, and Minoko. I just feel like it would have been not as interesting to just have it be told to us. Because like the dialogue between those campsite sections are not really that interesting. Not the dialogue, no, visuals, I guess, because it is just them kind of standing there and saying things. Like talking heads almost. So it's not like the most interesting, so I kind of wish that there was like something that would have happened in cutscenes. And I haven't explored everywhere, but even then, you really get to do most of your exploring in Act 3, and I've explored a lot of the map in Act 3, almost all of it, and I don't remember getting to any point where I felt like I was going to get anything special out of Lune, Ciel, and Minoko. I don't know. I just think that was like probably the game's biggest weakness was that. The narrative is great, and like Maelle and Verso are great, but The other three kind of fall to the wayside, and Gustav, obviously. But anyway, I'm open to being wrong. If you guys disagree, maybe that was enough for you. But I don't know. That was just something that I feel like was probably the game's biggest weakness, because it doesn't have a lot of weaknesses to me. Anyway, I actually want to talk about the world real quick, but the world is very distinct. I love how the map is like fractalized, you know, like broken up, and you get like glimpses of kind of what the world was before. Like, I think they called it the shattering. Okay, this is past Evan. No, future Evan. To correct past Evan, that is actually called the fracture, not the shattering. I think I got it confused with Elden Ring. I don't really know, but it's called the fracture. I kind of wonder if the shattering even existed, but anyway, that's probably getting too deep into things. Maybe like theory crafting at that point, but I like how the map is fractal and things are broken up. It's kind of like a mess of a child's toy box or like an unfinished painting. And I remember kind of saying that early on. It's just because of how like goofy the gestures are, or like some of the Nevrons are a little silly. Like, there's one with like Anne on his head, and you got the little goofy tanks, like the treasure chest guys. I don't know. It just seems whimsical, like a child made it a little bit. And to me, these are more spoilers, but it was giving hints that we were actually part of a painting the whole time, you know, because the gestures had like the brush hair type deal on their heads, and everything kind of gave me this impression of that, because we were out to stop someone called the Paintress. She can apparently make all these things in the world we inhabit. Like I said, I think I remember during the stream making a claim that the world almost feels like someone throwing paint to a canvas and just not really having an idea what they want to do or what the final piece should be. There was one specific thing that convinced me that we might be in a painting was like Maelle, when you start a battle, she would say things like, oh, let's spill some ink whenever we'd fight Nevrons. And I'm no sleuth, but I just find it so strange that she would use ink to create Nevrons. And just given that we don't really know anything when we start the journey, and there's a paintress out there, I was like, who's to say they aren't made of ink? They could be made of ink too. I was starting to think like, what if we're in a painting? And according to a friend of mine, I had apparently said that. I was like, what if Maelle and everybody, they're in a painting, and the paintress is her mom, and Renoir is her dad. That was just me throwing whatever to the wind, but apparently that was right. Spoilers. Anyway, yeah, back to the world, but the game just captures the idea of like traveling through a fantasy that I feel like is reminiscent of like Final Fantasy games, because I feel like they have really distinct worlds, you know. Like when you think of Final Fantasy 6, you know what Final Fantasy 6 looks like. When you think of 13, you know what 13 looks like, and 7 and 8 and 9. Honestly, even the recent ones like 16 and 15, even though they're, I think, a little bit more dialed back in terms of like really distinct visual areas. There's one in 15, I can't remember what that place is called, but it's like a city you go to where you fight. It's not what's that summon? What's the summon? The water one. For some reason I wanted to say Dragoon. Okay, this is past Evan here to tell you that the summon I was thinking about was Leviathan. It's Leviathan. Okay, I can't believe I have to keep doing this, but this is a message to who is now formerly future Evan, from future Evan, here to tell formerly future Evan that you were actually future Evan. When you referenced yourself as past Evan, that was incorrect. You were talking to past Evan, but you're actually former future Evan. But in that moment, you're future Evan. I'm future Evan in this moment. You're formerly future Evan, but you meant to say that you were future Evan, referring to past Evan. Okay, that's not confusing at all. I think out there they said they were heavily inspired by Final Fantasy X, and I've never played 10, so I gotta play 10. But I played like half of them, so like I understand like the visual identity that those games try to create for themselves. And there were some cool maps out there too. Like I had a few favorite maps. One of them was the one with, I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it might just be called Seren or whatever. But when you have to fight the giant dancing Axion, I think is what it's called. They were called. Her map was really cool because it's like really big drapery set up everywhere. So it was like when I see that, I'm like, why do you make drapery that big? Like that looks like drapery made for like a god or something, like some sort of god-like being, you know. And the temple was like huge too, like the doorways and everything. It's like, why do you make something so large when we're only this small? It definitely felt like a really grand sort of surreal place. And there were these dancing Nevron dancing around everywhere, and the map or the music felt really mystique. It gave it like this mystique. And there was one more thing I was gonna say. Oh, there was a guy, you know, Seren is like a giant dancing Axion, which is I guess a giant Nevron. And like as you venture further into the map, you come across like the guy weaving the dress, which it's apparently her dress, I guess. And he's so big and it's like grand, and I don't know, I just really like that. It gave me Elden Ring vibes, you know, like when you would uncover like places for the gods that existed beforehand. Like the gods were big, so a lot of the things were also large during that. And yeah, it gave me that idea. It definitely looks like an Elden Ring map to me. You might disagree, but yeah, it looked very much like an Elden Ring map to me. And hard transition, but I want to talk about, I think I kind of maybe mentioned the music a little bit, but like I do have to mention 2 tracks. So the music, well, first off, the music for the game, awesome, is amazing. I want to buy the vinyl set, but that's just $140. Your boy don't got $140 like that to throw around right now, so I'm gonna have to probably miss out on that. Very sad about that, but I do want it. But anyway, the music's awesome. I've been listening to it, and so far I like pretty much all the tracks I've listened to so far. You know, aside from like some of the side ones, or like there's some goofy ones in there. Like I think the Jethro Beach is a little goofy, but you know, it's good nonetheless. It works for what it's doing. But there's like 2 tracks that I think stand out to me. And the first one is Alicia, which is basically, I think, the theme that I think everybody pretty much knows at this point. It plays whenever you're on your PlayStation menu. You know, if you like leave it on the game, it'll like play its theme or whatever. Well, it plays that song. And before I even played the game, it played that, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be a pretty decent game. Like, I don't know, I judge a game, well, I don't judge a game, but like soundtrack will make me like a game a whole lot more if it's good. And I gotta say, like when that came on, I don't know, it was like I just knew that I liked it. Like when the strings come in for that, it was, oh, I don't know, it triggers like a response in me. It's probably unexplainable. It's like totally just like reactive, but like I just really like good soundtracks like that. So when the strings came into that song and it was starting to play and the vocals come in too, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good game. You know, I really think like a soundtrack for me can really sometimes carry a game. That's why I like games like you might disagree, hold on, but like Bloodborne, good soundtrack. Final Fantasy 13, Super Mario Sunshine, good soundtrack. Sonic Adventure 2, GOTY soundtrack. Okay, underrated. Might not be the best game in the world. To me it is, but the soundtrack is good. And Final Fantasy 7. Let me not forget about 7. I've been talking a lot about 13. I like 13. That was my first Final Fantasy game. Hades, that's a good one. But anyway, yeah, it's not the only thing I look for, but I've noticed when there is a good one. Second track. This is the one I feel like sets the stage because, you know, they do that. It's Lumiere. Lumiere's the song. And it goes, you know, it does the ba 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 da dee da ba ba da dee da da. You know, they do that a lot. And you know what that is? That's a leitmotif. You don't know what a leitmotif is? Look it up. I like leitmotifs because I don't know. I feel like leitmotifs are there to always reliably trigger this response, but like you can make it different. So like, to be honest, I wish I would listen to it more, but I just know it always played during hopeful or like character defining moments. So like when it came on, no matter what version was playing, whether it was soft or it was like bombastic, you like knew like this is my time, you know, or like we're setting the stage, you know, like they definitely set the stage because I think it plays in the beginning when Gustav shows up, but it plays at the end too, I'm pretty sure, when you have to fight the final boss. But like there's electric guitars and shit everywhere in that version. And like I don't know, I just think that leitmotifs are super cool because like I said, it's just like a way to trigger like, oh, this is my time. Or it could be, you know, it doesn't have to always be that, you know, maybe the leitmotif could be for a sad song. It could be whenever something sad happens, or you could turn that sad song into a hopeful song by changing it. So, you know, I just like that you can have different versions of the same song, but they can sound like there are like elements of the same song sprinkled in, but it can also be different, you know. I'm not doing a good job of explaining it. I'm kind of going based off emotions right now, but yeah, I just like that. Oh, you know what? I didn't talk about the maps. I should talk about the maps. Well, I did kind of. Seren? No, I did talk about the maps. No, there's another song that I like. A special shout out to one song, but it plays early on, and I think it's in a map called Spring Meadows, and it's I blanked. It goes Spring Meadows, Linen and Cotton. If you played the game, even if you haven't played it, you should look it up. Because in the vocals, it's the first song with English vocals, and I feel like they were kind of trying to like get into the themes of the game when they were singing, and it also made me listen to the soundtrack on the world continent a lot more, because I think eventually the world continent, like the world map music, changes, and the lyrics aren't. I don't know what they're in, but they're not in English. But I can distinctly hear them mention Verso and Renoir during the track, and I'm like, oh, they're singing about the characters. I don't know what they're saying, but they're singing about the characters. So, you know, that song is good. Linen, special Spring Meadows, Linen and Cotton. You gotta listen to that. That's a good song. I really do think the game does a good job at like successfully evoking an emotional response out of you that isn't always positive, and I'm kind of glad that it's okay with that, because I was really into the game in Act 1. Right, you kind of go like on this, for me anyway, you go on this like emotional journey where like Act 1 is like, oh, it's cool, like okay, we're meeting Gustav, he's a good guy. We're meeting Lune, she's pretty cool. We're meeting Maelle, she's chill, you know. And then at the end, he dies. And you're just like, fuck, are we even gonna make it through this? Like, who else is gonna die? They're probably worried about who else is gonna die. But then you get Verso, and it begins Act 2. And Act 2 is called Verso. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about Verso. Fuck him. You know, he's not Gustav. I want just bring Gustav back. I didn't use him, but he's better than Verso. I don't know anything about Verso. For all we know, he could be the end. And then Act 3 is like, oh, never mind. Verso's cool. Like he got shit going on too. You know, I didn't know, but all you had to do was tell me. You should have just said it from the beginning. I would have. He could have been on the team a long time ago. But yeah, I don't know. I just really like. I'm not doing a good job of explaining that, but I just really think it's cool that they were okay with doing that. 'Cause, you know, not many games really kill off characters in the beginning. The only one, or I should say during the journey, because maybe I should say RPGs, or maybe it's just like your party members. I don't know. I feel like, and maybe I'm just missing a bunch of RPGs or games that do kill off your party members really early on, but they killed Gustav off pretty early on. I was like, oh shit, like how that was fast. You know, I don't remember playing that much before they killed him off. Yeah, that was pretty cool. You know, it's crazy how they managed that, at least for me, because maybe it's not the same for you over there, but you like a game that is okay with doing things like that, and I think it worked because the team was like committed to a vision that they had, pass or fail. And the game also had like a limited budget. Well, I shouldn't say limited, but like it clearly didn't have like a really big budget like a AAA game would, because I don't think this is a AAA game from what I know. I think they would consider it more like a AA or whatever, but they clearly had priorities on their own limitations, which I think some people may not understand, that higher budgets can create their own problems, and that having the money to do something doesn't always mean you should. And I think sometimes can lead to bloat or like unnecessary things being added. I'm not advocating for only low budget games, but just a weakness of them try to be pretty wary of. Limited budgets come with their own issues, sure, but I do believe that limitations breed creativity, as cheesy as that sounds. And I just feel like making moves like that was kind of risky for their first game, but I feel like what drove them to do that was just because they may not have gotten too many chances to even do that again. Like, you can't, I feel like the more money you make, the less you can really like take risks, because that just means the more money you have to take, the more you have to take care of as your like company grows and grows and grows, right? So if you're gonna take risks, you might as well do it now and early on and just go big or go home, right? So I mean, maybe not, it depends on what's at stake, but they clearly had an idea of what they wanted to make. You know, but again, going back to the budgets, like limited budgets come with their own issues, but finding solutions to problems and like figuring out ways to stick to your vision despite those limitations, I think can make for like a very interesting product, at least. And I feel like Clair Obscur is a testament to that. So I just kind of hope that, even though it kind of just feels like I rambled about how good the game is in like different aspects for so long, I just kind of hope that they kind of don't lose that too much. I think it's inevitable that you lose a little some of that, because the success kind of carries a lot of weight, and you don't want to like let people down financially or in terms of like quality, right? So I do feel like they might lose a little bit of that, but I do think that was their strength for this. I do think that they had something with whatever vision and direction that they were trying to go with this game, and I hope they use that to carry it over to the next thing. Had I played this in 2025, I do think this probably would have been my game of the year. And I did play the 2 of the games of the year. I played Death Stranding 2, and shit, that might have been it. Or was it Hades 2? Yeah, I think that was it. I played Death Stranding 2. And I wasn't a big fan of Death Stranding 2 narratively. I think it was a little messy, but this one had like a way better package. So don't think that I think the other games don't deserve it. I think they probably do somewhere, just to someone, but I don't know. I think if I played this in 2025, I definitely would have chosen this as my game of the year. Probably the best soundtrack too, to be honest with you. Although I really like Death Stranding 2 soundtrack. Anyway, I'm rambling. I could go on forever. Clair Obscur is a good game to those who come after, and y'all have a good one. Bye.